It's time for the whole 9 yards. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ralph Ventre, and I am ready for a great Week 8 of Northeast Conference football. 6 of 7 teams in action. Wagner is on the bye. 2 teams step out of conference. 2 NEC rivalry games. Let's talk all about it. Let's get to work in the opening drive. Starting in Moon Township, after 3 consecutive Northeast Conference games, Robert Morris will take on Division II Central State this week live on NEC Front Row. Central State has given up 41 and 38 points the last 2 times out. That could bode well for a Robert Morris offense that has seen its production on the rise. Excluding its game at James Madison, Robert Morris has accounted for 31 points per game. In the last 3 outings, it was 35 points per game for the Colonials offense, which has gotten a boost from a 1-2 punch at running back. A pair of newcomers are making their presence felt. Of course, there's 2-time NEC Rookie of the Week Elijah Jackson, recently added to the Jerry Rice Award watch list. Jerry Rice Award, of course, that goes to the top freshman in the FCS. Jackson averaging 5.4 yards per carry in 3 NEC games. He has 4 rushing touchdowns in those games. As far as his partner in crime, we'll talk about him later on in the show. As for this Saturday in Moon Township, RMU will look to keep its ground game in high gear. They'll look to end a 4-game slide. The Colonials against Central State, high noon kickoff. Taking a look at the second non-conference game on the Week 8 docket. After a 2-1 NEC start, Bryant will hit the road trying to become the second NEC team to win at Fordham this year. CCSU accomplished the feat a few weeks ago. Bryant is actually coming off a loss to CCSU this past week, but prior to that, Bryant had won 3 in a row thanks to its high-octane offense. As for its Week 8 matchup at Fordham, the Rams of the Patriot League are allowing more than 415 yards per game. Meanwhile, Bryant will enter with the NEC's top-ranked passing attack, 15 pass touchdowns to only 6 interceptions, Bulldogs averaging more than 270 pass yards per game. They look to continue that success against Patriot League member Fordham live on Stadium this Saturday. I still have 2 NEC contests to preview. Both of them are rivalry games. We'll start in Loretto, Pennsylvania. Keystone State clash between visiting Duquesne, making the short trip out Route 22 to meet St. Francis U. This game has been a high-stakes affair in recent years. In both 2015 and 2016, the winner of the Duquesne SFU matchup went on to represent the NEC in the FCS playoffs. Now, coming into this year's matchup, both teams already have a league loss to its name, so the stakes are even higher. Regardless of its impact on the race for the NEC title, St. Francis's Evan Ferguson knows that this Keystone clash is always a marquee matchup.
Definitely a game that we look forward to every year, one that really gets everyone going and you look forward to as a player. And I think I can speak for the team when I say this, that it's one that you mark on your schedule early on.
Now, you'll get to see a pair of high-profile receivers in this matchup, 2 preseason All-Americans, Duquesne senior Nahari Crawford He leads the Northeast Conference in receiving yards, more than 100 yards per game. On the other side, it's former NEC Offensive Player of the Year, Cameron Lewis. The SFU senior paces the circuit in receptions per game, 6.2 catches per game for Lewis. He had a huge go-ahead touchdown catch in last week's setback at Wagner. Another interesting aspect about this SFU Duquesne matchup, the Duke's offense leads the Northeast Conference in third down conversion percentage. On the other side, St. Francis has the NEC's top-ranked third down defense. Looking more specifically at that SFU defense, they'll face a top-tier rusher for the second week in a row. Last week, the Red Flash held Ryan Folse, the leading rusher in the FCS, to under 3.5 yards per carry. The only other team to do that this season was ACC member Syracuse. Now this week, the SFU defense, led by the hard-hitting safety Hakeem Kennard, they'll go up against A.J. Hines. The former Jerry Rice Award winner has 257 rush yards and 4 TDs in 2 NEC games this season. In addition to trying to slow down A.J. Hines in the Duquesne run game, St. Francis will look to get after the quarterback on Saturday. The Red Flash lead the Northeast Conference in sacks this season. On paper, it looks like a favorable matchup, considering the fact that the Dukes have been the most sacked team in the NEC this year. But still, SFU head coach Chris Valario knows it all comes down to finishing for his team.
It's not one thing. It's a combination of things, but we have to learn how to finish. And we're just not finishing these tight ball games. And as we know, in this conference, there's no pushovers. Everybody's good. We have to just keep working on these positives. We can't, we can't keep harping on the negatives. We got to keep building on the positives, and we know what the problem is. We have to finish. I don't know if it's injuries, if it's youth. Every program in America goes through it, and we have to figure it out and get through it.
Our fourth and final matchup on the Week 8 docket, our NEC featured game of the week on ESPN3. It's the Nutmeg State rivalry. Central Connecticut will host Sacred Heart. It'll kick off live at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Paul Dottino, Kevin Gilbride, John Schmelk on the call. Now, CCSU will be playing at home for the first time since September 15th. The Blue Devils head into this one with the NEC's top-ranked offense following a tremendous 2-week showing. CCSU averaged more than 650 yards per game in the last 2 weeks. They scored 48 unanswered points in last week's win against Bryant. A big key to their success has been Drew Jean-Guillaume, the junior tailback, 313 rush yards in the last 2 games. Last year against Sacred Heart, Jean-Guillaume had a bit of a coming out party. He had a 70-yard touchdown reception. He also rushed for a touchdown in that one. And that game, of course, a 26-15 win for Central. That was CCSU's NEC opener. It kicked off the perfect NEC season, and the Blue Devils haven't lost a conference game since. Now, they'll host a hungry Sacred Heart team that's fallen on some hard times of late. Now, despite less than stellar outings their last few times out, Sacred Heart's defense still ranks second in the NEC, and head coach Mark Nofri is confident that his team has the ability to raise its performance on the field. After all, the Pioneers did jump out to a 3-0 start this season.
They can't tell me that they're not able to do it because I saw them do it for the first 3 games of the year. And probably the Wagner game is one of the better games we played in the last 2 or 3 years in terms of firing on all cylinders, offense, defense, special teams, energy, emotion, the whole time. And the proof is right there, and they understand that, and they just need to go out now and start from scratch. Quarter one, play one, and play for 60 minutes. For us to win, we have to stop their quarterback, obviously, be on the plus side of the turnover battle this year, and obviously on defense, we got to be able to stop the run.
Let's check in on the NEC stock market. I'll tell you whose value is on the way up. Well, that other Robert Morris running back that I promised to tell you about, it's Bowling Green transfer Terrance Stephens. After getting 20 games of experience at the FBS level, Stephens took his talents to Moon Township, and so far, so good. In his first NEC game, he had a 19-yard touchdown run in the third quarter against Bryant. His second NEC game against defending champion CCSU, he had a 74-yard run. That was the longest run by a Robert Morris player since Sam Dorsett back in 2003. His third NEC appearance against Duquesne, 16 carries for 112 yards, 6 receptions for 110 yards. It marked the first time in nearly a quarter century that a Robert Morris player went over 100 rushing yards and 100 receiving yards in the same game. The last Colonial to do so was the late, great Tim Hall in 1994, 2 years before the Northeast Conference's inaugural season. Of course, Tim Hall, a former All-American at the collegiate level, went on to play in the NFL for the Raiders, so it's safe to say that Terrance Stephens is in some pretty good company. In 3 NEC games, the junior is averaging 8.5 yards per carry. His name is Terrance Stephens, and anytime your name can be mentioned in the same sentence as the late, great Tim Hall, you know your stock is on the way up. If you'll excuse me, I'm calling the Twitter timeout. Now, the football community is a special one, especially out in Western Pennsylvania, where there has been an outpouring of support for the Duquesne University community in wake of the tragic loss of Marquis Jalen Brown. Amongst those offering support to the Dukes, it's the NFL's Pittsburgh Steelers. As you can see here in Greg Meskel's tweet, the Dukes are wearing 3 decals on the helmet to honor the memory of Jalen Brown. One of them is the iconic Pittsburgh Steelers logo. The Steelers are allowing Duquesne to wear the logo as a sign of unity throughout the city, and it shouldn't come as a surprise because the ties between the Steelers and Duquesne run deep. After all, the Dukes play their home games at Rooney Field. Pittsburgh Steelers Dan Rooney and the chief of it all, Art Rooney, are both Duquesne graduates. Of course, there's also a connection between current Duquesne wide receiver Nahari Crawford. He's the cousin of Steelers linebacker Ryan Shazier. Certainly a nice gesture by the Steelers reaching out to their Duquesne brethren, and I'm sure it's one that the Dukes appreciate very much. Blue 42, Omaha, Omaha. It's time for the NEC Audible. We're moving into the heart of the Northeast Conference schedule. The race for the NEC's automatic bid to the FCS playoffs is intensifying by the week. And Bryant's head coach James Perry and Sacred Heart head coach Mark Nofri, they certainly recognize that. In terms of Bryant's Perry, he knows that week-to-week improvement is a must to succeed in Northeast Conference play.
We've always got to get better. And as a coach, I'm really sensitive to that. Just make sure you're learning and getting better. Because in this league, if you're not getting better every week, you have no chance down the stretch. So there's a lot to learn from a lot of things that we needed to do better. And I think the kids took that seriously. I know as a staff we're taking it seriously. So we started with a good Sunday, and we'll have another great practice Tuesday.
As for Sacred Heart, which has the task of going up against the defending champion and red-hot CCSU Blue Devils this week, well, Mark Nofri knows that this test is only one of many to come.
Let's reset, refocus. The games from here on out, are going to determine if you can have a winning record, if you're going to be NEC champs, if you're going to make the playoffs. These next 5 weeks are going to be big, and only the strong survive.
That's amazing, bro. What has me in a state of amazement this week? It's a quartet of Northeast Conference running backs. I told you about Robert Morris's Terrance Stephens in the Stock Rising segment, and he wasn't the only one to put up monster numbers in Week 7. Stephens was one of 3 NEC backs to go over 200 total yards from scrimmage last week. Central's Drew Jean-Guillaume ran for 203 yards, added another 20 on 3 receptions. Then there was A.J. Hines in Duquesne's win over Robert Morris. He rushed for 182, added 36 yards in the passing game. Then there was Wagner's Ryan Folse. He's still the leading rusher in the football championship subdivision, and although he didn't reach 200 yards from scrimmage last week, he went over 150. Folse ran for 102 against St. Francis last week. He also took a screen pass 51 yards inside the 10-yard line to set up a key Wagner touchdown. It's been a great year for Ryan Folse. It's been a great year for NEC running backs. In particular, a phenomenal Week 7. 3 backs with more than 200 scrimmage yards, 4 backs with more than 150 scrimmage yards. That's amazing. So that'll do it for the Week 8 edition of the Whole 9 Yards. 4 games to watch this week. 2 on Front Row, 1 on Stadium, and then, of course, the featured NEC Game of the Week on ESPN3, Sacred Heart at CCSU. As always, I appreciate you joining us. For NEC Front Row, I'm Ralph Ventre. We'll see you again next week.